Have you heard what happened to Mrs. Ada? The whole neighborhood is talking about it. Gift, are you sure? People exaggerate things all the time. Sure? I saw it with my own two eyes. She was standing outside shouting at her husband while another woman sat comfortably inside his car. You're serious? Very serious. Before this week is over, everybody will know the truth. Hold your hand still, please. Sorry. But wait till you hear this one. You know that pastor's daughter? Gev, don't tell me you're starting another story. It's not a story. I saw her sneaking into a hotel with a man who wasn't her fiancé. Are you certain? 100%. These eyes don't lie. Give it 2 days and the whole town will be talking about it. Gift, one day your mouth is going to land you in serious trouble.
Have you ever met someone who couldn't mind their own business? Someone who treated every whisper like breaking news? Someone who believed they were helping when in reality they were quietly setting fires they couldn't see? Welcome to African Tales by Onana. Today's story reminds us that not every secret is ours to carry. And by the end of the story, you will see how a few careless words nearly destroyed innocent lives. Well, meet Gift. Around the neighborhood, everyone knew her. Not because she was the richest, not because she owned a business, not because she held any position of authority. People knew Gift because she somehow knew everybody else's business. If a family received money from abroad, Gift heard about it. If a husband surprised his wife with a new phone, Gift somehow found out before the wife finished charging it. If two neighbors argued behind closed doors, chances were Gift could tell you who started the fight, who shouted the loudest, and according to her version, even what they had for breakfast. The funny thing was, she never considered herself a gossip. In her mind, she was simply sharing information. And whenever she added a few extra details to make a story more interesting, she convinced herself it wasn't really a lie. It helps people understand the situation better, she often told herself. Every morning, Gift stepped out of her small apartment carrying an empty shopping basket. But she rarely came home with only groceries. She returned with conversations, rumors, secrets, half-truths, and sometimes stories that should never have left the people who trusted her. The strange part was that people complained about Gift almost every day. That girl talks too much. Be careful what you tell her. Your matter will become tomorrow's headline. Yet somehow, the very same people continued telling her things they didn't want repeated. Then, one Monday morning, something new happened. The loud sound of a moving truck echoed through the streets. Within seconds, curtains shifted, doors opened, children abandoned their games. In African neighborhoods, a new family doesn't arrive alone. Curiosity moves in with them. A young couple stepped out of the truck. The husband carried boxes into the house while his wife thanked the movers with a smile so warm that even the oldest neighbors smiled back. They seemed like a lovely couple, someone whispered. Gift folded her hands and watched them from a distance. Her curious eyes followed every movement. Then, almost under her breath, she smiled. Let's see how long that happiness lasts. She thought it was just another harmless comment. She had no idea that the people climbing out of that truck were about to change her life forever. 2 weeks passed, just enough time for the new couple to become familiar faces around the neighborhood. The husband was Daniel, his wife was Ada. Before long, everyone agreed on one thing. They genuinely looked happy. Every evening, Daniel returned from work with something in his hands. Some days it was roasted corn, other days it was fresh fruit. On difficult days, when money was tight, It was nothing more than Ada's favorite soft drink. Their routine became part of the neighborhood's evening entertainment. Some couples watched them with admiration, others watched them with envy. Gift, she watched them with curiosity. The more she looked, the less convinced she became. No marriage is this perfect, she often thought. There has to be something they are hiding. And once that thought entered her mind, she began looking for proof. Then one quiet Thursday afternoon, Gift was walking past their compound on her way back from the market. As she passed the sitting room window, she heard Ada's voice. She wasn't speaking loudly, she was crying. Gift slowed her steps, then she stopped completely. Inside the house, Ada spoke into her phone. I don't know how much longer I can keep this from him. Gift's ears sharpened immediately. Ada continued, I just pray everything works out before he finds out. Before another word could be heard, the call ended. Gift remained frozen outside the window. Her heart wasn't racing because she was worried. It was racing because her imagination had already started writing a story, a secret. She quietly stepped away from the house. She never waited to hear who Ada was talking to. She never asked what the secret was. She never considered that there could be a completely innocent explanation. Instead, her mind connected things that had never been connected before. She remembered seeing Ada collect a sealed package earlier that week. She remembered Ada leaving the neighborhood alone on Thursday morning. She remembered a middle-aged man standing briefly outside their gate a few days ago. To anyone else, those were ordinary moments. To Gift, they suddenly looked like evidence. By the time she reached the market, she had already convinced herself that something was terribly wrong inside Daniel and Ada's marriage. As if on cue, another woman greeted her while picking fresh tomatoes. Gift, how are the new neighbors settling in? Gift smiled. She leaned closer, lowered her voice, and looked around to make sure people were listening. I really shouldn't say this. She paused just long enough for curiosity to do its work. But I don't think that marriage is as perfect as everyone believes. The woman gasped. Eh? What happened? Gift shook her head slowly. I've noticed a few things. Another pause. But please, don't tell anybody I told you. Nothing travels faster than a sentence that begins with, don't tell anyone. Before sunset, 5 people had heard those exact words. By nightfall, each person had added a little more to the story, and by the following morning, the rumor no longer belonged to Gift, it belonged to the entire neighborhood. That's the strange thing about gossip. It rarely stays the same size. It feeds on imagination. Gift heard the different versions floating around the neighborhood. Some were far more dramatic than anything she had ever said. She could have corrected them. She could have stopped the rumor before it spread any further. Instead, she simply nodded. Sometimes she even smiled. People gathered around her every morning. Gift, have you heard the latest? What really happened? You already know the truth. The attention felt good. For the first time in days, people weren't just greeting her, they were looking for her, and Gift enjoyed every minute of it. Meanwhile, Ada had no idea that her private life had become the neighborhood's favorite discussion. She continued her routine as though everything was normal. On Tuesday afternoon, Gift noticed Ada entering a medical building in town. Immediately, she crossed the road and stood behind a packed minibus. There she goes again, she whispered. She waited. 10 minutes became 30. 30 became almost an hour. When Ada finally came out, she was holding a large brown envelope tightly against her chest. She looked around carefully before getting into a tricycle. Give's eyes widened. There has to be something inside that envelope. Of course, she had no way of knowing what it contained, but by then, facts were no longer as exciting as assumptions. 2 days later, another piece of the puzzle appeared. A middle-aged man walked up to Danny and Ada's gate carrying a neatly wrapped package. Ada came outside, collected it with both hands, thanked him warmly, and quickly carried it indoors. The man smiled politely before driving away. Gift watched everything from across the street. Aha! So that's the man. She never crossed the road to ask who he was. She never considered he might be a counter or a family friend or someone helping the family. She had already written her own ending. That evening, Gift stopped by the neighborhood salon. The conversation was lively as always. These days, marriages don't last. She sighed dramatically. That's why people shouldn't be fooled by appearances. The room became silent. She lowered her voice. You know, when a married woman keeps receiving secret packages and visiting places she doesn't explain, she paused. The truth usually comes out sooner or later. One of the women frowned. You mean Ada? Gift quickly lifted her hands. I didn't mention anybody's name. She didn't have to. Everyone already knew exactly who she meant. Within minutes, whispers filled the salon. By the time the last customer went home, the rumor was no longer a rumor to the neighborhood. It had become the truth. And the most dangerous part, the story was finally making its way to the one person who should never have heard it, Daniel. For nearly a week, Daniel noticed little things that didn't make sense. Conversations stopped whenever he walked past. Neighbors who normally greeted him warmly suddenly forced awkward smiles. A few people looked at him with pity. Others looked at him as though they knew something he didn't. Then, one Friday evening, as Daniel was closing his shop, an old friend pulled him aside. The man's face was unusually serious. Daniel, I don't know if I should be telling you this. Daniel frowned. Telling me what? His friend hesitated. I have been hearing things about Ada. Daniel's smile disappeared. What kind of things? I don't believe them. But the new neighborhood is talking, the friend sighed. For the next few minutes, Daniel listened in complete silence. Every rumor, every accusation, every lie. By the time his friends finished speaking, Daniel's heart felt heavier than when the conversation had begun. He thanked the man and drove home. That evening, Ada met him at the gate with her usual cheerful smile. You look tired, she said, reaching for the bag in his hand. Daniel gently pulled it back. I'll carry it. Ada paused. It was a small moment, but sometimes small moments speak louder than an argument. Inside the house, dinner was unusually quiet. The laughter that once filled the dining table had disappeared. Daniel barely touched his food. Ada noticed. Is everything okay? Daniel looked at her for a long moment. There were 100 questions running through his mind. He wanted to ask all of them. Instead, he asked only one, Ada. Is there something you are hiding from me? The question hung in the air. Ada blinked in surprise. What do you mean? Daniel looked away. I've been hearing stories. Ada's face immediately changed. What stories? He repeated everything he had heard: the secret phone calls, the mysterious man, the sealed packages, the hospital visits. Ada stared at him in disbelief. Then her eyes slowly filled with tears. So, instead of asking me facts, you believed strangers. Daniel immediately shook his head. I didn't say I believed them. But you came home looking at me like a suspect. Ada stood up from her chair. She looked hurt, not angry, hurt. I never imagined we would reach the point where other people's words would become louder than mine. She turned and quickly walked into their bedroom. Across the neighborhood, Gift slept peacefully that night. She had no idea that the story she started had finally entered the very house she had been talking about. And by morning, the damage would become almost impossible to undo. By the following morning, the silence inside Daniel and Ada's home had become a third person living with them. The cheerful greetings were gone. Breakfast was quiet. Even the sound of cutlery against the plate felt unusually loud. That afternoon, Ada made up her mind. I would tell him everything tonight, she whispered to herself. It has gone too far. She picked up her handbag and left the house. Her destination wasn't a hotel. It wasn't another man's house. It wasn't a hidden apartment. It was the hospital. There, she met an elderly woman who smiled warmly the moment she saw her. Daniel's mother. The older woman reached for Ada's hand. My daughter, have you told him yet? Ada gently shook her head. I wanted to keep my promise. The older woman's eyes filled with regret. I never thought it would cause this much trouble. Months earlier, Daniel's mother had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition. She had begged Ada not to tell her son until the doctors confirmed that surgery could be arranged. She knew Daniel. If he found out too early, he would sell everything he owned without thinking twice. So together, mother and daughter-in-law had quietly started making arrangements. The mysterious phone calls, they were with doctors. The sealed packages, medical reports and test results. The brown envelopes, hospital documents. Even the middle-aged man Gift had seen, he wasn't a secret lover. He was Daniel's maternal uncle, helping to organize the surgery without alarming the family. Every suspicious moment had a completely innocent explanation. That night, Daniel didn't go home. He drove around aimlessly, parking by the roadside more than once, hoping the noise in his head would quiet down. It never did. Every rumor he had heard competed with every memory he had shared with Ada. Then his phone rang. It was the hospital. Your mother has been asking for you. Could you come as soon as possible? Daniel frowned. My mother, is everything okay? Please come, she would explain. Less than an hour later, he hurried into the hospital. The moment his mother saw him, she reached for his hand. My son, you've been upset with Ada, haven't you? Daniel looked confused. Mama, how do you know that? The older woman sighed deeply. Because all of this, she glanced at the brown hospital file on the bedroom table, is my fault. Daniel stood still. His mother slowly explained everything: her diagnosis, the heart condition, the doctors, the surgery, the secret she had begged Ada to keep until everything was ready. She told him how Ada had spent months moving from one hospital to another, meeting specialists, filling out forms, saving money, and speaking with relatives who could help. Every hospital visit was for her. Every mysterious phone call was about her treatment. Every sealed package contained medical records. By the time she finished speaking, Daniel felt the room spinning. He covered his face with both hands. What have I done? His mother squeezed his hand gently. You trusted strangers when you should have trusted your wife. Daniel wiped his eyes and stood up. I have to go home. Daniel drove straight home. Ada was sitting quietly in the living room. She looked exhausted, as though she had cried until she had no tears left. Daniel walked in slowly. Without saying a word, Daniel walked in. Then he looked at his wife. I am sorry. Those two words broke the wall between them. Ada burst into tears. Daniel walked over and held her tightly. For several moments, neither of them spoke. When Ada finally pulled away, Daniel looked at her with quiet determination. This isn't where it ends. Ada frowned. What do you mean? Daniel took a slow breath. Someone started this, and if we stay silent, they would do it to another family. Ada understood immediately. She wasn't interested in revenge, but she also knew something had to change. That evening, Daniel visited the community chairman. He laid every hospital document on the table. The chairman read them carefully. His expression slowly changed from curiosity to disbelief to disappointment. So, he finally said, this entire neighborhood judged an innocent woman. Daniel nodded, and the person who started it must answer for it. The chairman sat quietly for a moment before calling two respected members of the community. I want an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. They looked up. And make sure gift is there. No explanation, no accusations, just one instruction. Bring her. The next morning, Gift woke up like every other day. She swept the front of her house, watered the flowers in old paint buckets, picked up her shopping basket. As she got ready to leave, she smiled to herself. The market would be lively today. She had no idea people were no longer waiting to tell her news, they were waiting for her. Just as she reached for her door, there was a firm knock. Not the playful knock of a neighbor, not the impatient knock of a customer. A slow, deliberate, confident knock. Gift opened the door. Standing outside were two respected members of the community. Their faces were unusually serious. Good morning, Gift, one of them said. The chairman had asked that you come with us immediately. She quickly locked her door and followed them. As they walked through the neighborhood, something felt different. They eventually arrived at the community square. The moment Gift stepped inside, her feet stopped moving. Rows of plastic chairs had been arranged in a large circle. The chairman sat at the front. Beside him were the elders. Daniel was there. Ada was also there. The market women were there. The salon owner, the security guards, the elderly women who always sat outside their compound. Almost the entire neighborhood had gathered. Every face turned towards Gift. She swallowed hard. A chair had been left empty right in the middle. The chairman looked at her calmly. Gift, please have your seat. She sat down, then looked around. Nobody smiled, nobody whispered, nobody greeted her. The chairman folded his hand on the table. He looked around the gathering before asking one simple question. Can someone tell this meeting how the rumor about Ada began? The square fell silent. Then, one woman slowly raised her hand. She looked at Ada, then at Gift. Finally, she faced the chairman. I heard it from my neighbor. Our neighbor immediately stood up, and I heard it from the woman who sells vegetables. The vegetable seller nodded. I heard it at the salon. The salon owner spoke next. It was Gift who hinted that something was wrong. All eyes shifted to Gift. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The chairman remained calm. Gift, is that true? Gift looked around the gathering. The same people who once laughed at her stories, the same people who eagerly waited for her latest update, were now waiting for something, the truth. Slowly, she lowered her head. Yes, I started it. Daniel stood up. There was anger in his voice, but beneath the anger was pain. My wife spent months trying to save my mother's life. He held up the hospital file for everyone to see. These were the secret packages. He lifted another document. These were the hospital visits. He pointed towards an elderly man seated near the front. And the man everyone called a secret lover, he paused, is my mother's younger brother. I nearly lost my marriage. My wife cried because of lies. My sick mother blamed herself, and all of it, he looked directly at Gift, started because one person decided that assumptions were the same as facts. Gift's eyes filled with tears. I never meant for it to go this far. Daniel answered quietly, nobody ever does. The chairman rose from his chair. This is bigger than Gift. He slowly turned toward the crowd. When the first person repeated the story, you could have stopped it, but he looked at another group. When you added your own version, you made it worse. Then he faced everyone. A rumor survives because people carry it. The chairman looked at Gift. You started the fire, but this neighborhood supplied the firewood. I'm sorry, Gift said, tears rolling down her cheeks freely. I judged you without knowing the truth. I spoke when I should have remained silent. I asked others to keep a secret that I had already broken. And I am sorry to you all. I spent years treating people's private lives as entertainment. I thought I was only talking and never realized my words could destroy a home. Ada finally stepped forward. Her voice was gentle. I forgive you. Gift looked up in surprise. Ada continued. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Let today change you. The chairman nodded. From today, let this meeting remind all of us that before repeating any story, we must first ask whether it is true, whether it is necessary, and whether it is kind. The gathering slowly came to an end. They walked home in thoughtful silence. Gift remained standing in the square long after everyone has gone. For the first time in her life, she had no story to tell, only a lesson to remember. And from that day forward, whenever someone tried to gossip in her presence, Gift would smile politely and say, no, let's leave that story with them, because she has learned something the hard way. Words don't need hands to destroy lives, they only need willing mouths. And sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't someone who has the most to say, it's the one who knows when to remain silent. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned from Gift. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell to receive more interesting stories.